So hello and welcome. This is Kimberly K. LaBoo, CEO and founder of LaBoo Publishing Enterprise. Welcome to another segment of the LPE Author Chat series, where we interview authors who have agreed to share their journey of self-publishing in hopes that they may inspire others to take that leap of faith to publish their own masterpiece. Today, we have a special guest with us. We have Ms. Pamela Reece, who is the author of I Chose the Good. So welcome to the LPE Author Chat series, Pamela.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
You're
I appreciate
welcome.
the opportunity.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, good. So we are going to talk a little bit about your relaunch of your book that was released in 2017. I Chose the Good. And so when I did my research and I went back and I looked at your book as it was released in 2017, and I looked at the cover and some of the content of the book, it is evident that there was a significant change that happened over the last 2 years. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and about what transpired between then and now that prompted you to want to relaunch the book, I Chose the Good?
Yes, so I'm really excited to be on the show tonight, but I want to talk the book. Um, when I wrote the book and published it in 2017, I was just really excited about becoming an author. And it's good content. It's a great story. It's my story of redemption. But it didn't get the traction that I felt that it deserved because so many amazing things happened during the time in Boston. And I felt like everybody needed to know my story. And I felt like it should be a bestseller. Um, but it was not. And I worked with a publisher who did the work for me, and I thought for sure that it was a good piece of work, but and I was somewhat satisfied because I set out a goal to write a book and get it published and everything, but it just I my hopes my expectations were somewhat you know uh, gosh.
Not mad.
So it was just really, it was really like a I can't say it was a bad experience, but
Uh-huh.
my expectations were really, it just didn't do what I felt like it should have done. So I came in contact, I sat on it for about 2 years and it did sell a little bit, almost 2 years. But I came in contact with Dr. Kishma George, who is the purpose pusher. And I talked about my book. It bothered me so much that I brought it up to her and she goes, well, you can relaunch your book.
Yeah.
And she goes, you can relaunch your book. If you feel it's a good story and the world should know, then why don't you try relaunching it? She goes, why don't you edit it? Why don't you? She looked at what I had already produced and she said, that picture, no good. You know, so she says you need a professional photo shot.
Yeah.
There are certain things that you need to do. You need a watch party. You need to market your book. There's so many things that need to happen before the book goes live. And
Yeah.
she talked me through it. And I said, okay. So I took the book down. I am it's edited big time because now I have more hindsight. I've got more insight,
Yeah.
and over time, all authors should. One very thing that I would tell authors today is that you have to be an avid reader. An avid reader is going to make you an amazing writer. It's going to increase your vocabulary, your hindsight, the way your thought processes, and what have you. And so when I took it down, so much revelation and so many thoughts began to flow like a river that I didn't have an inkling about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So so that's why I'm relaunching it, and it's greater. It's got great content. It has it's funny. It's sad. It's eye opening. You'll be in wonder. You'll be in amazement. You'll also see um, how God took me from point A to point B and on and on and on, right through the story. It really is a story of redemption, and it's way better the second time around.
I love it. I love it. It is so funny. And that's a great conversation for people who may have put something out a while ago, and I'm working on one of my projects now for a relaunch of that one this year as well. And it's amazing, like you said, what we learn, in hindsight, and we grow. And so maybe, that piece can be picked back up again if you see true value in it. So I'm really happy to be having that conversation, because that may be helpful to someone else who may think the same thing you thought. It's like, this was a great piece of work, but I didn't do my due diligence at the time to make it be what it could have been. And so you're going to go back and pick that up and do it right the second time around. So I applaud you for that.
Absolutely.
I applaud you for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So and I can tell, like, looking at the past cover and then looking at your new cover, I was like, wow, like, just such a big
It's like night and day, right?
yes, such a big difference. I said, okay, there was some revelation. There was a lot of stuff that happened in between this one and this one. And you can see that transformation just through the cover alone. And I think it's fabulous. So I think it's going to do what you intend for it to do this time around. So I'm excited for you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And so in the book, there seems to be a lot of emphasis around forgiveness. So, for example, one of the things you have in the book is it says, learning to forgive has been one of the most powerful life lessons I've ever learned. It has made me the winner every time. And then a little bit further down, you said, I discovered that unforgiveness kept me imprisoned while the perpetrators had moved on. And then lastly, you said unforgiveness was the enemy's trap to capture my soul. If he could keep me imprisoned in the cell of unforgiveness and anger, I'd forever be shackled. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your journey and some of the things that you've had to overcome, and what made you realize that forgiveness was your path to healing, and as is suggested in the book.
Yes. So there's so many things that happened to me as a child. First off, I grew up in a traditional. First, started off in a traditional setting with a mom and a dad, and we went to church. Everything seemed okay for a little while, and then things got really topsy turvy. And we ended up leaving our beautiful home. My father's from the West Indies. My mother's from the deep South, Meridian, Mississippi. And of course, there are cultural differences there. And but with him being hospitalized and separated from his family, we ended up losing a very beautiful brownstone in the south end of Boston, which today is probably a worth between $5 and $7 million.
Wow.
Um, my mom, had problems. I'm just going to tell you, from the get go, she had a lot of problems, and you can only work through your differences or your problems when you have the help, or you are inclined to get some help, and that she did not.
Mm.
And so here we are, minor children growing up, and we're being, I was told that I was ugly. There are particular adjectives that my mom would use to describe my appearance.
Wow.
And parents are supposed to affirm their children. They're supposed to, from a very tender age, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're successful. But I didn't get any of that. I got that I was a failure, that I'd never be anything, that I was very ugly. I can tell you the names, just unbelievable. The book talks about it in great length. And so I began to wear that. And I believed it, because if your mother's telling you that, it had to be true.
Wow.
So it didn't matter what anybody else said. It's what she said that really, mattered. And that was really truth. That was my truth. So I wore that day in and day out. The other thing too was that she was going through problems, dealing with a lot of demons on the inside. And so she resorted to alcohol. And so, being a stone alcoholic for so many years, we were subject to domestic violence. She had several, men living with her, what have you. And after a while, we get acclimated to them. And then she'd set the rule, well, you're going to stop calling him Mr. and you're going to start calling him Daddy. So he went from this makeshift, um, he went from this boyfriend thing to this makeshift stepfather.
Yeah.
So one night, one of my mother's boyfriends came into my room when I was about 10 years old. And by the way, we hadn't been taught, like, what is sexual education? What does it mean to be menstruating? So I didn't know any of that. I just didn't have it. And you weren't supposed to ask questions. You
Wow.
didn't address grown. You didn't talk to grown folk unless you had to go to the bathroom.
Mm.
We were told to address people as Mr. and Mrs., but you could not ask questions. I was a very inquisitive child too, but it was silenced because of the rules. And so things were going on in the home, but you couldn't say anything about it. So that would just quiet me all the way around. If it was a school environment, if I was in camp or whatever, I didn't ask questions because that was the ground rule in the house. So one night, Mr. Brown came in. We had just come in from a summer outing, family outing. This guy was probably at first any single mother's dream come true
Mm.
because he was a family guy. He asked about our homework. He was very, very interactive with us, played ball, catch, whatever. Just seemed like the ideal guy for your children. And so, he went from being a boyfriend to moving in the house. But one night we had come home from a summer outing, and I was just bum tired. And I remember being lifted up out of the car and being taken to the house. And then when I knew that I was in my bed, I fell asleep. I felt comfortable enough, and I knew that I could go to sleep. But several hours later, um, I realized that somebody is forcing their tongue down my mouth,
Wow.
and I there's a penetration going down in my lower parts, and I have no clue what is happening. I'm also being threatened with his hand over my mouth, telling me that if I say anything, shut up, first of all, but if I say anything, he's going to kill me.
Mm.
When it was finally over, I noticed that there was a discharge on one of my legs, and I am in total shock, chaos, confusion, you name it. I'm just 10 years old. I have no clue what has just happened, but I knew that it was severely wrong.
Mhm.
I got up the next morning and I could barely walk, but I made it to the bathroom and I showered until I could shower no more. And I
Mm.
could still smell him and I could still taste him. And I lived with that for 30 years.
Mm.
So I had this love hate relationship with my mother because after I got older, I could never figure out why couldn't anybody hear me that night? And how could she allow a stranger into the house and look at what he's done? So I've judged her as wrong. And I felt that I was empowered when I judged her as unforgivable. So I lived with that for 30 years. But one day I went to a service and there was this amazing woman of God. I can't remember her name, but she called me out. I got in line for prayer, and she was ready to pray. When she was ready to pray for me, she pulled me aside and she talked to me very quietly. And she said, "You have to forgive your mother."
Wow.
And I am a grown woman at this time, grown, married with a son.
Mm.
And I bawled like a baby. It was the very first time that I hadn't I hadn't cried like that in years. And I said, "But you have no clue what she did to me." She goes, "Yes, I do, because the Spirit of God is telling me what has happened." So I wasn't ready to forgive her yet, because to me, I'm thinking, you just don't forgive people like that. This is like the unforgivable thing.
Mm.
So she said to me, you have to forgive her. If you want to go forward, if you want to be successful, if you want to be free, you have to release her. Because you know what? Anybody that's bothered you, anybody that's hurt you, has already moved on. They're not even thinking about you. So you're allowing people to rent space in your head and in your heart, and you're not getting anything for it. So I had to forgive.
Wow.
And it wasn't easy. And I had to do it many, many times, multiple times,
Yeah.
until I I was free.
Yeah.
And then one day I was totally free. And it was so liberating.
I
And I
love
had so much joy.
I love it.
And then
I
I
love
realized there's a scripture that says that for Zion's, God says, for my sake, for my own sake, I forgave Zion. And so I had to realize, okay, it's really about me. It
it.
really is about me. So I'm going to forgive and I'm going to let go. And I did. And I've had
Amen.
to forgive many times. I've had to forgive many times.
Yeah. Forgiveness is a lifestyle. It's a daily walk.
It really.
It really is a daily walk.
Mhm.
And that's something that I've learned over the years. It's like you have to choose to forgive every single day. And it is a lifestyle. It's a choice. It's a
It
choice.
really is. It
So
really is.
it's a freeing choice, as you
It
have.
really is.
Yeah, and I learned that over the years myself and in my own journey about forgiveness, and it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. So I'm happy to see that your book has a strong focus on that, because if a lot of people would learn to do so, then their lives could be so much different. So
So
different.
much different. So much better.
Yes,
So much better.
yes, yes. So let's talk about your writing journey and what that has been like for you, because you were writing about very difficult situations. So was that hard for you to do? And if so, like what made you push through to go ahead and share your story?
Yeah. So first of all, it was very difficult.
Mhm.
Um, because I don't think I would have been able to write that story. Um, let's say like let's see, I'm 55 now. I wouldn't have been able to write it in my early 30s because it was still healing. And
Yeah,
there's something that Bishop Jakes said that has always that stayed with me forever. You know when you're healed, when you can talk about it and it doesn't hurt anymore.
oh yeah,
He Yes. And
yeah,
so it's been a journey. Now I kept a journal for a very long time. It's taken me about 20 years to write it. Because I had to remember. There's some things, when you've been traumatized like I have, you you can put things in a back file cabinet in your mind, and you
mhm,
can totally forget about it. And
yeah,
then something will happen that will trigger that incident. And so I tabled it, and I had to step back, and I had to go through a deliverance process, and I had to cry about it, and I had to pray about it. I had to get my word in there to do the healing, because God's word is healing. And then I felt strong enough to pick it back up and start again. So that part of it has been a journey. But now when I took it down and I edited it this time, I am like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that, and I do it with joy now. I do it with joy. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at what you've been through. I start talking to myself like that and going, oh, the love and the grace of God.
absolutely the grace of God, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
beautiful. So, what is it that you want to accomplish with your book? Like, what is the impact that you want it to have on the readers?
Yeah, so there's so many things I want to emphasize, but the one thing that I really want to emphasize is that um, I want to emphasize forgiveness, but I also want to emphasize to women or to anybody that's ever been sexually abused to talk about it, because I held on to my story for 30 years. And it's so amazing because it still happens today and in this age, where a woman or a man will be sexually abused and you don't hear about it, or they don't come forward until it's 20 and 30 years later. It still happens. You see it in the news, it is everywhere. Now, for me, it happened to me. I was just a little kid. I didn't know anything. I didn't, the information age. We're in the age of information. We didn't have internet and social media like we do today. And then I was growing up in a age or of ignorance, where you just didn't talk. You weren't supposed to talk. But I want women and men who have been abused in any way to open up, because that is the first step towards your healing, is admitting that it happened and to begin talking about it. That is the very first thing. And so that's one of the main reasons why I wrote the book. I went into great detail, as much as I could remember and as much as I could uncover, to talk about explicitly about the details about what happened, because I'm a liberated woman now and I can tell it. And I have forgiven my perpetrators, and I have forgiven everybody that's hurt me. And it feels so good. And I want somebody, when they read it, I want them to be healed. I want them to say, you know what? I need to talk. Something happened to me. Uncle so and so, this one, that one did this to me, and I need to tell it, because that's the first step towards your healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true. Um, yeah, I can just relate to that on so many different levels. So absolutely
Yeah.
true what you're saying. And about the whole writing process as well. And I always tell people that there is healing in writing,
It's
so,
true.
sometimes if you can't speak it, write it. And then maybe it will, that will help you to get that out. But there's definitely healing through writing, and I recommend it. Yeah, I just recommend that as a path to healing. And so that's
Mhm.
great. So what
Mhm.
advice would you give to someone who is contemplating writing their own book?
Um, First of all, the thing that I say is that it's not an easy process. But if you have a gift, if you have a story to tell, it would be selfish for you not to write and release that gift and that story to the earth. Um, we you can, it's to me, I know that, I get older, there are many more books inside of me. I've got a lot of other things that are in the pipeline that I want to release very soon, especially after this one gets launched and relaunched. And as the year progresses, I want to do some more things in the summertime. But and once you start writing, if you know that you've got a story and you want to tell it and you want to write, that could that's that gift on the inside of you that needs to come out. And you need to just go ahead and do it, and stop waiting for tomorrow and next year. Stop tabling it and tabling it and tabling it, because time is going. We're already in the month of May. I thought we were in April, but we're in
Yeah.
the month of May. I thought that I just thought the other day that Easter was coming, when it actually, Easter has already left and Mother's Day is coming. So that tells us that the time is really speeding up, you know? And then, what is it? As long as you've got a pulse, then God's got a plan for you. As long as you're alive, you should be going after, you should be manifesting and bringing to life the gifts that God has put on the inside of you. Now, I know that I'm a writer, and I believe there are plenty of other writers out there too. Don't sit on your gift.
Yeah.
Get going. And yes, it is a tedious process. It is indeed. But it's a gift that you release to the world that'll never die.
Yeah.
You'll die, your
But it
children will die, your work will remain alive on the earth forever. So get going.
that's legacy right there.
Yes,
Legacy.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So, in your writing journey, tell me what has brought you the greatest joy.
I would say the finished product.
Yes.
The finished product. The finished product. It's so amazing, because we're all born as creators because we're of the God kind, right? He's a creator, and so we're a creator. And so it's been amazing to see how I've used a journal, I've used Google Docs, I've used my recorder, I've used all those things. I could be in the bathroom and God will drop something down in my spirit. And it's just amazing when you put the pen to paper and you write and you write your thoughts, and then people will look at your work and go, wow, that is amazing. Sometimes I'll put an inspirational quote out on Facebook or Instagram, and some people have come back to me and said, that was amazing. I needed that today. That was like water to my soul. So it's life-giving. It really is life-giving.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it's nothing like receiving that copy of your book in your hand for the first time. So I agree with you. The finished product is like, I did it.
Yes.
Always
Yes.
amazing. Always an amazing feeling. So do you have a favorite place that you go to write?
Um, Not particularly. I will write in any room of my house
Oh,
because as long as I've got my book and as long as I've got my phone, because there's so many apps out there that can help you to keep everything together. You could do it in Google Docs, and you can pick it up anywhere, whether it's on your laptop or on your phone. You can pick it up anywhere and just pick up
right.
from where you left off. I get inspired everywhere because that's just me. I mean, I can get inspired anywhere. I park, the red line, the subway station. I get inspired in the bathroom, the bathtub, anywhere. So it just, and
Nice.
I can write anywhere. I can write anywhere, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a quiet place, because I can tune. I've learned how to tune the world out
Mhm.
and start writing. So yeah, anywhere.
That's great. That's great. So as you alluded to earlier, I often hear that the best writers are also readers, are great readers. So what types of books do you like to read?
I try to read all genres as long as my
Mhm.
spirit man can handle it.
Yeah.
So I like mystery. I like action. I love action packed. I love instructional self help books. I
Mhm.
like a little bit of everything. I like to read. I like to read about history. Um, it just I can read just about anything really.
Yeah.
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 So right now I'm reading about 5 books right now.
Wow, all at the same time?
Yeah. All at the same time. All at the same
Wow.
time. I'll pick up one in the morning, pick up one in the afternoon, pick up one at night. There's
Yeah,
something that I probably read on the weekends, but I'm always reading. I'm always reading.
that is great. Well, these
Hmm.
interviews always go so quickly. So first, I'll just ask if there's any one nugget that you'd like to leave with the viewing audience on today.
Yeah, I want to particularly reach out to people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Those of you that already have a career, and that's all you do. But you want to, but you know that there's something more inside of you. You know that you were made for more. I'm appealing to you to not sit on it anymore. I'm appealing to you to get going. I'm appealing to you to um, don't waste your gift. Don't let it go to the grave with you. Do something about it. Whether you are an author, a speaker, a playwright, a songwriter, whether you want to run for public office, the time is now. The time is now. I am 55 years old, but I wish that I had gotten started a little bit earlier. So, you know what? I am running, trying to get stuff done
Yeah,
because the best is yet ahead.
yeah,
So my theme is, as long as you've got a heartbeat, you can get it done. As long as you've got a pulse, God's got a plan.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah, great advice. Let's get going, right? So
Exactly.
tell our viewers how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. You can find me at Pam Reece Motivator. Um, you'll see me there almost every day. I'm posting something inspirational. I'm also on Instagram as well.
Okay. Okay. So you guys
Great.
need to look for Pam, friend Pam on Facebook, and follow her on Instagram. So, oh, tell us when is the release date again of your book, I Chose the Good?
Yes, yes. So the release date is May the 20th.
May the 20th. So you guys connect
Yeah.
with her, stay connected to her. So when the book releases, you can go and read about this incredible story, this incredible journey, and all about forgiveness. And I love what I've read so far, and I just can't wait to get and read the entire book. So I've already learned so
Thank
much
you.
about you, and so it's been my pleasure to share you with our viewing audience. And I thank you for being our special guest on today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. God bless
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. So, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in to another segment of the LPE Author Chat series. And if you have a book in you that you need to get out, be sure to connect with us and go on over to www.laboopublishing.com and check us out. Take care and be blessed till next time, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.